Captain Taesung stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the coordinates on the screen. New Jeju Colony had gone silent 3 hours ago. The distress signal had been brief, just a few seconds of screaming and weapons fire before it cut off. His ship had pushed its engines to maximum speed, but he knew in his gut they were already too late. When they entered orbit around the small frontier world, the scanning officer turned to him with a pale face. "Sir, I'm detecting no life signs from the colony." Taesung felt his stomach drop. 3,000 people lived in Haven Colony. Farmers mostly, with their families. Teachers, doctors, engineers, building a new life on a world that reminded them of old Korea back on Earth. Now, the scanners said they were all gone. He took a team down in a shuttle. Jiwoo, his security officer, checked her weapon 3 times during the descent. Hana, the medical examiner, sat quietly with her equipment bag on her lap. Nobody spoke. What was there to say? The colony came into view as they broke through the clouds. Or what was left of it. The main settlement was just black scars on the ground now. The agricultural domes had collapsed, their frameworks twisted like broken bones. Smoke still rose from some of the buildings. They landed at the edge of the destruction. Taesung was the first one out, his boots crunching on glass and debris. The air smelled like burning plastic, and something worse. Something organic. Jiwoo scanned the area with her tactical visor. Weapon signatures are consistent with Velkari plasma cannons. Military grade. This wasn't raiders, sir. This was an organized attack. Taesung walked through what had been the central square. He'd visited this colony 6 months ago during a routine patrol. There had been a market here, with stalls selling vegetables and handmade crafts. Children had played in the fountain. Now, there was nothing but ash and melted stone. Hana knelt beside something and made a small sound. Taesung went to her side and immediately wished he hadn't. He'd seen combat before, but this was different. These weren't soldiers. They were civilians who'd been running away when they died. They didn't even have weapons, Hana said quietly. Her hands shook as she took samples for analysis. They were just trying to escape. The team spread out, documenting everything. The destruction was methodical. Every building had been targeted. Every shelter had been breached. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Then Jiwoo's voice crackled over the radio. "Captain, I've got something. Underground shelter at the eastern edge. The door is still sealed." They ran. Taesung's heart pounded as they reached the heavy metal door built into the hillside. Jiwoo worked the emergency release, and the door hissed open. The smell of recycled air and unwashed bodies rushed out. 12 people stumbled into the daylight, blinking and crying. 12 survivors out of 3,000. Among them was a girl, maybe 10 years old, who stared at Taesung with eyes that had seen too much. Her name was Bo-ra. She didn't cry. She just stood there, covered in dust, holding the hand of an older woman who couldn't stop shaking. Back on the ship, Taesung watched the recordings they'd recovered from the colony's security system. The footage showed Velkari troops landing in military dropships. Their commander had broadcast a message to the entire colony before the attack began. The alien's face filled the screen, his scaled features twisted in what might have been contempt. "Humans," the Velkari said, in translated speech. "You squat on territory claimed by the Velkari Dominion. This world was ours before you arrived with your false permits and forged documents. We gave you warning to leave. You ignored it. This is the consequence." Then the shooting started. Taesung watched it 3 times. He made himself watch, because these people deserved to have someone witness what happened to them. The colonists had tried to surrender. They'd broadcast their own messages, showing their legal registration documents, proving they had legitimate claim to this world. The Velkari had ignored them and kept firing. When it was over, the Velkari commander had made one more broadcast. "Let this be a lesson to all humans in this sector. The frontier is not yours. Leave, or share this fate." Hana's analysis confirmed what the footage showed. Every victim had been killed by Velkari weapons. The DNA evidence was conclusive. The attack had been unprovoked and systematic. Taesung filed a formal complaint with the Galactic Court of Universal Rights the moment they reached communications range. He included everything: the security footage, the DNA samples, the weapon analysis, the survivor testimonies, the colony's legal documents. Under galactic law, this was murder. Mass murder of civilians. There was no ambiguity. The Galactic Court was supposed to be the highest authority in known space. It had been established 3,000 years ago to resolve disputes between species and punish war crimes. Earth had joined the galactic community 130 years ago, and humans had been taught to respect the court's authority. Taesung believed in the system. He'd spent his entire career serving it. He filled out every form correctly, followed every procedure, made sure the evidence was properly documented. The case was airtight. 6 weeks later, the response arrived. Taesung was in his quarters when the message came through. He opened it, expecting to see an arrest warrant for the Velkari commander. Instead, he found a single page of text. "Case dismissed," it read. He stared at the words, certain he'd misunderstood. He read further. The court explained that the territorial claim to New Jeju was disputed. The colony had failed to file proper zoning permits with the regional administrator, an office Taesung had never heard of. The paperwork was technically incomplete. More importantly, the judgment continued. Humans were classified as a developing member species. Their testimony and evidence were given appropriate weight, considering their recent addition to galactic civilization. In other words, the court didn't believe them, or didn't care. There was a footnote suggesting that humans and Velkari should resolve their differences through diplomatic channels. The case was closed. Taesung read the judgment 3 times. Then he sat in the dark for a long time. He thought about Bo-Ra, who still woke up screaming every night. He thought about the 12 survivors, whose entire world had been burned to ash. He thought about 3,000 people who died because they'd believed the galactic community would protect them. The system had failed them. Not by accident. The dismissal was too quick, too convenient. The court had known exactly what happened on New Jeju. They'd seen the same evidence Taesung had submitted. They'd watched the same footage of unarmed civilians being murdered. They just didn't care enough to do anything about it. Taesung went to the observation deck. Through the window, he could see New Jeju in the distance. A small blue world that should have been home to 3,000 dreams. Now it was just another piece of territory the powerful could fight over. Jiwoo found him there an hour later. She didn't say anything, just stood beside him and looked out at the stars. "The court dismissed it," Taesung said finally. "I know. I saw the message. 3,000 people. And the court says it doesn't matter because we didn't file the right paperwork." Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "So what do we do?" That was the question, wasn't it? They could file an appeal, but Taesung already knew it would go nowhere. They could try diplomatic channels, but Earth had no leverage. Humanity was weak by galactic standards, new, unimportant. The system only worked for those with power. Everyone else could beg for scraps of justice and hope someone was listening. Taesung made his decision. "We stop asking for permission," he said. "If the galaxy won't give us justice, we'll take it ourselves." Jiwoo looked at him. "That's treason, sir." "I know," she smiled then, cold and hard. "Good. When do we start?" 6 months after Haven Colony burned, Taesung no longer wore a uniform. He'd resigned from the Colonial Defense Force, submitted his paperwork, and walked away from 20 years of service. His commanding officer had tried to stop him, but Taesung's mind was made up. The military served the system, and the system was broken. Now he traveled from colony to colony, carrying a message that made government officials nervous and colonists lean forward in their seats. He spoke in meeting halls and bars, in warehouses and private homes. Anywhere people would listen. The Galactic Court denied us justice, he would say. They watched our people die and called it a paperwork problem. They'll do it again. To you. To your families. Unless we build something different. Most audiences were split. The comfortable ones, those on safe inner worlds like Earth and Mars, called him a radical, a terrorist. They said he'd start a war humanity couldn't win, but the frontier colonists understood. They knew how exposed they were, how little the galaxy cared if they lived or died. When Taesung finished speaking, volunteers lined up. He built his team carefully. First came Hyun-woo, a former prosecutor who'd spent 3 years trying to get the Galactic Court to hear human cases. He was thin and tired, with gray hair at his temples despite being only 40. He'd watched the court dismiss 3 separate complaints, each one documented perfectly. Each one ignored. I believed in the law, Hyun-woo told Taesung when they first met. I still do. But their law isn't meant for us. We need our own. Sun-hee joined next. She was an engineer. Brilliant, with ships and weapons systems. She'd lost her brother in what officials called a mining accident. But she knew better. Valkyrie sabotage had collapsed the mine shaft, killing 37 workers. The court had called it insufficient evidence. I can build anything you need, she said simply. Just point me at the target. Minji came with a reputation. She was a combat veteran, discharged after losing an arm in a border skirmish. She'd replaced it with a military-grade cybernetic that made her stronger and faster than baseline human. More importantly, she had contacts. Ex-soldiers who were angry at how the galaxy treated humanity. Pilots, weapons, specialists, people who knew how to fight. I've got 20 good people who'll follow me, she told Taesung. They're tired of watching humans get pushed around. Give us a target, and we'll handle it. Dong-hyun was different from the others. He was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien species and their behavior. He'd spent years living among different cultures, learning their customs and psychology. He understood how aliens thought better than most humans. If we're going to do this right, he explained, we need to understand our targets, not just kill them. We need to know how they think, how they'll react, what scares them. Finally, there was Youngmi. She was barely 25, but she could break into computer systems that most species thought were impossible to hack. She'd taught herself programming by cracking entertainment networks as a teenager. Now she offered those skills to something more important. The galaxy runs on data, she said. Financial records, communications, ship movements. If you need to find someone, I can find them. Together, they established the Human Justice Tribunal. It wasn't a government organization. It had no official authority. It operated in the shadows, funded by anonymous donations from humans who were tired of being ignored. Their mandate was simple. When the Galactic Court failed to deliver justice for crimes against humans, the tribunal would investigate, judge, and execute sentence itself. Their first case was obvious. Valkyrie Commander Theksu Nath, the officer who'd ordered the Haven Colony massacre. He'd been promoted after the attack. Given command of a battle cruiser, the Valkyrie Dominion had rewarded him for murdering 3,000 humans. The Galactic Court had declared him innocent. The Human Justice Tribunal declared him guilty. Finding him took 3 months. Youngmi tracked his ship's movements through intercepted communications. Dong-hyun identified his patterns, learning that Theksu Nath frequented a neutral trade station where officers from various species gathered to do business and drink. Sun-hee designed surveillance devices small enough to hide in the station's ventilation system. Minji trained a strike team in close-quarters combat and extraction techniques. Hyun-woo prepared the legal case, documenting every piece of evidence they'd need for a proper trial. Taesung watched the surveillance feeds for weeks. He saw Theksu Nath laugh and drink with other officers. He saw the Valkyrie commander brag about the human extermination he'd carried out. The alien showed no remorse. If anything, he seemed proud. The raid happened during station night cycle, when fewer people were around. Minji's team moved fast. They used stun weapons to drop Theksunath's bodyguards without killing them. The station's security didn't even realize anything was wrong until the team was already gone, spiriting the Velkari commander onto a waiting ship. They took him to a hidden facility in an asteroid belt. Sun He had prepared it carefully, converting an old mining station into something functional. There was a courtroom, a holding cell, and living quarters for the team. Theksunath woke up in the cell, confused and angry. When he saw humans standing outside the bars, he started to laugh. "You primitives think you can judge me?" he said through the translator. "I am an officer of the Velkari Dominion. You have no authority over me." "The Galactic Court had authority," Hyunwoo replied. "They chose not to use it, so we will." The trial took 3 days. Hyunwoo presided, conducting the proceedings with the same formality he would have used in an Earth courtroom. They presented every piece of evidence: the security footage, the DNA samples, the weapon analysis, the survivor testimony. They even let Theksunath defend himself. The Velkari commander was defiant at first, calling the whole proceeding a farce. But as the evidence mounted, his attitude changed. He stopped, laughing. He saw that these humans were serious, that they'd built a real case against him. Finally, he tried to justify his actions. "The territory was ours," he argued. "Your colony was illegal. I was following orders to murder civilians," Hyunwoo said. "Children, the elderly, people who were unarmed and trying to surrender. You knew they weren't soldiers. You killed them anyway." Theksunath had no answer to that. The verdict took less than an hour to reach. Guilty on all counts. War crimes. Crimes against sentient beings. Mass murder. The sentence was death. Minji carried it out herself. She used a plasma pistol, the same type of weapon the Velkari had used on the colonists. 1 shot to the head. It was quick, but Tae-sung made sure Theksunath saw it coming. The Velkari's eyes went wide in the final second, understanding at last what his victims had felt. Then it was done. Young Mi broadcast the entire trial and execution across multiple galactic networks before anyone could stop them. The video spread like wildfire. Every human colony saw it. So did thousands of alien worlds. The message was clear. Velkari Commander Theksunath had murdered 3,000 humans. The Galactic Court had declared him innocent and let him go free. The Human Justice Tribunal had found him guilty and executed him. Humanity would no longer accept the galaxy's version of justice. They would make their own. Within hours, the responses started flooding in. Outrage from the Galactic Council. Condemnation from dozens of species. Demands for Earth to arrest and execute the tribunal members. But there were other messages too. From frontier colonists who said, "Thank you." From humans who'd lost family, to alien violence that went unpunished. From people who finally felt like someone was fighting for them. Tae-sung watched the reactions from the asteroid facility. He knew what they'd done would have consequences. The galaxy wouldn't forgive this easily. But when he thought of Bo-Ra, the little girl who'd watched her parents die, he knew they'd made the right choice. The galaxy had refused to give humans justice. So the Deathworlders had brought their own. And they were just getting started. The video of Theksunath's execution played on screens across the galaxy. In the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Kyung-soo watched it for the 5th time. His face carefully neutral as other diplomats shouted around him. "This is barbarism," the Velkari representative screamed, his scales flushed dark with rage. "Humanity must be expelled from the council immediately." Authorian delegate stood, her voice booming through the speakers. "We demand economic sanctions, military restrictions. These humans cannot be allowed to mock galactic law." Kyung-soo waited for the shouting to die down before he spoke. He'd been Earth's ambassador for 15 years, and he'd learned patience. The tribunal's actions do not represent Earth's official position. Our government condemns. Condemns? The Valkyrie cut him off. Your people murdered a decorated officer. This is an act of war. What Kyung-soo wanted to say was that Theksunath had murdered 3,000 civilians first, and the council had done nothing. He wanted to point out the hypocrisy of calling for justice now when they denied it 6 months ago. But diplomacy meant swallowing those words. Earth's government is actively searching for the tribunal members, he said instead. They will be brought to justice. It was technically true. Earth's security forces were looking for Tae-sung and his team. But Kyung-soo had seen the reports. The tribunal had gone underground, scattered across multiple colonies, and half the human frontier was hiding them. More importantly, Kyung-soo wasn't sure he wanted them caught. Back on Earth, the government was in chaos. The Prime Minister held emergency meetings every day. Some officials wanted to arrest every known associate of the tribunal. Others quietly suggested that maybe the tribunal had a point. Mars Colony declared its support for the tribunal openly, passing a resolution that called their actions justified. Europa stayed neutral. The outer colonies sent money. Humanity was divided, and the galaxy was watching. Meanwhile, the tribunal wasn't hiding. They were hunting. Their second target was a Thordian mining consortium called the Broken Chain Company. For years, they'd used slave labor in their asteroid mines, including captured humans. Workers died regularly from accidents, malnutrition, and abuse. When human rights groups had filed complaints, the Galactic Court had dismissed them for procedural irregularities. The company's executives thought they were untouchable. They lived in luxury on Thord Prime, protected by corporate security and legal shields. Young Mi found their records anyway. She cracked the company's encrypted files and discovered the truth hidden beneath layers of accounting fraud. The executives had known about the slavery. They'd ordered it. They'd profited from it directly. Sun-hee designed infiltration drones that could bypass the company's security systems. Dong-hyun studied Thordian psychology and determined the best way to hurt them: public exposure and financial ruin. The tribunal didn't kill the executives. Instead, they did something worse. On the same day, at the same hour, Young-mi released the company's internal documents to every major news network in the galaxy, financial records showing illegal profit, communications ordering the use of slaves, even video footage from the mines showing the conditions workers endured. Simultaneously, Sun-hee's drones delivered copies of the evidence to the company's competitors and to Thordian regulatory agencies. Within hours, the Broken Chain Company's stock collapsed. Their assets were frozen. Their executives faced criminal charges from their own government. The tribunal had destroyed them without firing a single shot. The galaxy noticed. This wasn't just about revenge. The tribunal was professional, organized, and effective. They gathered evidence, built cases, and executed justice with precision. Some people started asking uncomfortable questions. A Havarian journalist named Kalis published an investigation showing that the Galactic Court had dismissed over 300 cases involving lesser species in the past decade alone. Species like humans who didn't have political power or economic leverage. The pattern was clear. Justice only worked for those who could afford it. A Quellan ethicist wrote an essay that went viral across academic networks. She argued that while the tribunal's methods were extreme, they were addressing a genuine, systemic failure. When legal systems became tools of oppression, she wrote, resistance became a moral duty. Not everyone agreed. The Galactic Council established a special task force to hunt the tribunal down. They put a Vreldian investigator named Kalisizine in charge. Kalisizine was famous for her work. She'd solved cases that others thought impossible, tracking down war criminals and corrupt officials across dozens of star systems. She believed in the law absolutely. To her, the tribunal represented chaos. a threat to everything civilization had built. She started with the financial records. Someone was funding the tribunal, and money left traces. She tracked donations through 17 shell companies before hitting a wall. Young Mi had covered their tracks well. Then Kalisizin tried a different approach. She investigated the tribunal members' families and associates. If she couldn't find the team directly, she'd find someone who could lead her to them. That's how she found Sun Hee's sister. Her name was Day One, and she lived on Mars Colony. She worked as a teacher and had 2 children. She'd had no contact with Sun Hee since the tribunal formed. But Kalisizin didn't believe that. Earth security arrested Day One on charges of aiding terrorists. It made news across human space. The government was trying to prove they were serious about stopping the tribunal, even if it meant arresting innocent people. Sun Hee saw the reports and went quiet. Taesung found her in her workshop, staring at a picture of her sister's children. "They're using her as bait," Sun Hee said. "They want me to try a rescue. Then we don't give them what they want," Taesung replied. "She's my sister." "I know." Sun Hee's hands clenched into fists. "How many more people get hurt because of what we're doing?" Taesung didn't have a good answer to that. The tribunal was paying a price for their actions. And it wasn't just the members themselves. It was families, friends, anyone connected to them. But then Young Mi brought news that made the decision more complicated. A message had come through their encrypted network. It was from a Pelthine, a species that humans had barely heard of. The Pelthine were small, weak by galactic standards, and poor. Like humans, they'd been ignored by the Galactic Court for years. The message was simple. "We have a case you should see." Dong Hyun researched the Pelthine situation. 5 years ago, a group of Pelthine refugees had been traveling to a new colony world when their ships were attacked by mercenaries. 3,000 Pelthine had died. The survivors had filed a complaint with the Galactic Court, providing evidence of the massacre. The court had dismissed the case. Insufficient evidence, they claimed, though the proof was overwhelming. Now the Pelthine were asking humans for help. The team gathered to discuss it. Hyun-woo was cautious. "If we take non-human cases, we're expanding our mission. That brings more attention, more danger. It also legitimizes what we're doing," Dong-hyun argued. "Right now, the galaxy thinks we're just human extremists. If we help other species, we become something different. We become a real alternative to the court." Minji shook her head. "We're already stretched thin. Kalisizin is closing in. Taking on another case could expose us." Taesung listened to them debate. He thought about why they'd started this. It was supposed to be about justice. Not just human justice. If they only cared about their own species, how were they better than the system they were fighting against? "We take the case," he decided. The others stared at him. "This isn't just about Haven Colony anymore," Taesung explained. "The Galactic Court fails everyone who doesn't have power. If we only help humans, we're saying those other species don't matter. I won't do that." It was unanimous in the end, though Minji still looked worried. They reached out to the Pelthine contact and received files documenting the refugee massacre. The mercenaries responsible were called the Crimson Fleet. They operated legally, protected by contracts with various governments. The Galactic Court couldn't touch them, but the tribunal could. As they began investigating, Kalisizin closed in on their asteroid facility. Young Mi detected the surveillance too late. Task force ships appeared at the edge of the system, moving fast. "We need to evacuate now," she said. They scattered. Sun Hee rigged the facility to explode behind them, destroying evidence. The team split into separate cells, each taking different routes to different safe houses. Taesung's ship barely made it through the jump point before Kalisizin's forces arrived. He watched the facility explode on the rear cameras, taking with it months of preparation. They'd lost their base, but they'd escaped. For now, as they fled through hyperspace, Taesung received a message from an anonymous source. When he opened it, He found a single sentence. "Your sister is fine. She'll be released soon. Keep fighting." It was signed with an Earth government code. Someone in the official system was secretly supporting them. Taesung smiled. The galaxy thought humanity was divided. Maybe they were. But even among those who publicly condemned the tribunal, there were people who understood what they were trying to do. The hunt would continue. Kali Sezin wouldn't stop. But neither would they. Justice didn't wait for permission. Operating in separate cells made everything harder. Taesung commanded one team from a stolen freighter that jumped between systems every few days. Minji ran another group from a hidden base on an uninhabited moon. Hyunwoo worked from a safe house on a neutral colony world, coordinating their legal research. They communicated through Youngmi's encrypted network, never staying on any channel long enough to be traced. It was exhausting and inefficient, but it kept them alive. The Pelthine case consumed them. The Crimson Fleet mercenaries who'd killed the refugees weren't hiding. They operated openly, taking contracts from corporations and governments to pacify disputed territories. The refugee massacre was just one job among dozens. Dong-hyun dug deeper into their operations and found something disturbing. The Crimson Fleet's biggest client wasn't a corporation. It was the Arconate Imperium, a founding member of the Galactic Council itself. The Council has been funding them, Dong-hyun explained over an encrypted call, for at least 20 years. The Arconate hires the Crimson Fleet to do things they can't officially order. Then the Council's legal system protects the mercenaries from prosecution. Taesung felt the pieces click into place. This wasn't just about isolated failures. The system was designed this way. The powerful used it to commit atrocities while maintaining clean hands. The Galactic Court existed to protect them, not to deliver justice. "If we expose this," Hyunwoo said, "we're not just fighting mercenaries anymore. We're taking on the Council itself." "Then that's what we do," Minji replied. Her voice was hard. "We didn't start this to be halfway heroes. But gathering proof meant getting close to dangerous people." Sun Hee infiltrated a Crimson Fleet supply station, planting surveillance devices in their computer systems. She was almost caught twice, escaping only because Youngmi created diversions in the station's systems. Dong-hyun posed as a xenobiologist studying battlefield medicine, interviewing retired mercenaries about their experiences. Most wouldn't talk about specific operations, but he learned enough to identify patterns and targets. Then Sun Hee's worst fear came true. Earth security had released her sister Day One from custody, but they'd been watching her the whole time, hoping Sun Hee would make contact. When Sun Hee sent a single encrypted message, just 3 words, "I love you," they traced the signal. The attack came at dawn on the moon, where Minji's team was based. Council task force ships dropped out of hyperspace without warning. Marines stormed the facility in powered armor. Minji's team fought back. They'd prepared defenses, and they made the attackers pay for every meter. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. Minji held the main corridor herself, her cybernetic arm moving faster than human reflexes, dropping Marines with precise shots. But there were too many. A plasma grenade exploded too close, and the shockwave threw her against a wall. Her cybernetic arm sparked and went dead. Pain flooded through her nervous system as damaged connections sent wrong signals to her brain. Her team got her out. They fell back to their escape ships, leaving behind equipment and supplies. 2 of Minji's soldiers died, covering the retreat. They got her to a black market medical station 3 jumps away. The doctor was a Hevarian, who asked no questions as long as they paid in advance. He examined Minji's cybernetic arm and shook his head. "The damage is too extensive," he said. "The arm needs complete replacement. And even then, the neural connections are degraded. You'll never have full functionality again." Minji lay on the medical bed, her face pale. How much functionality? Maybe 60%. At best. For a soldier, that was a death sentence. Minji had built her reputation on being the best. on having reflexes and strength that let her fight multiple opponents at once. Now she'd be slower, weaker, a liability. Tae-sung came to see her 3 days later. She was sitting up, staring at her damaged arm. "I'm done," she said before he could speak. "I can't fight anymore. Not like before." "You're not done until you say you're done," Tae-sung replied. "And even then, you're still part of this team." "As what? I'm useless now." "You're not useless. You're Minji. You trained our entire combat force. You designed our tactical protocols. You think those Marines got past your defenses because you're weak? They got past because they brought 3 times the force we expected. And you held them off long enough for everyone to escape." Minji looked away. "2 people didn't escape. I know. And that's on me. Not you. I'm the one who made the decision to split up. I'm the one who didn't see Colossus' trap." They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Minji said, "What now? Now, we finish what we started. The Crimson Fleet is still out there. The Arcanate is still funding atrocities. And we have enough evidence to prove it. But using that evidence meant making a choice. Hyunwoo wanted to go public, leak the information to journalists, and hope public pressure would force reforms. He believed the system could still be fixed from within. Tae-sung wasn't sure. He'd seen how the galaxy reacted to evidence before. They'd had proof of Thek's Unath's crimes, proof of the Broken Chain Company's slavery. None of it had mattered until they'd taken action themselves. The debate happened over encrypted channels, the team scattered across different systems. "If we leak this to the right people," Hyunwoo argued, "it could bring down the Arcanate leadership. The council would have to reform, or they'll bury it like they bury everything else." Minji countered. "The only thing they understand is force." Youngmi had been quiet through most of the discussion. Now she spoke up. "There might be another option. Ambassador Kyung-soo." "Right." Everyone went silent. "He's sent us 3 messages through back channels," Youngmi continued. "He's never identified himself, but I tracked the encryption keys. It's him. He's been feeding us information. Earth's ambassador is secretly helping us?" Dong-hyun sounded skeptical. "He's been in the council for 15 years, Youngmi said. "He's seen everything we've seen. Maybe more. What if we give him the evidence? Let him present it officially?" "Young, it was risky. If Kyung-soo betrayed them, they'd lose everything. But if he was genuine, it could work. An official accusation from Earth's ambassador would carry more weight than leaks from fugitives." Sun-hee made the decision for them. Without telling anyone, she contacted Kyung-soo directly and arranged a meeting. Tae-sung was furious when he found out. "You could have exposed us all." "I know," Sun-hee said. "But my sister was arrested because of me. People are dying because of what we're doing. If there's a chance to end this without more bloodshed, I had to take it." She'd given Kyung-soo a data chip with evidence of the Arcanate's connection to the Crimson Fleet. Contracts, communications, financial transfers, everything needed to prove the council itself was complicit in war crimes. 3 days later, Kyung-soo called for an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Tae-sung watched the broadcast from his ship, his heart pounding. The ambassador stood before the entire council, in front of representatives from 1,000 species, and presented his case. He showed the evidence. He named the Arcanate officials who'd authorized the massacres. He demanded a formal investigation. The chamber exploded. The Arcanate delegation walked out in protest. Other species demanded to examine the evidence. Some called it fabricated. Others demanded immediate action. But the chaos created an opening. Multiple species began calling for reforms to the galactic court system. The cracks in the facade were showing. Then Colossus received new orders. Tae-sung learned about it from an intercepted communication. The Vreldian investigator had been told to terminate the tribunal hunt, with extreme prejudice. No more captures, no more trials, kill on sight. Someone powerful wanted them dead before they could cause more trouble. Khalees's Inn set her trap using Bo-Ra, the Haven survivor. The girl was 15 now, living on Mars under witness protection. Khalees's Inn leaked information that Bo-Ra would testify at an upcoming hearing about the massacre. Tae-sung knew it was a trap. He knew Khalees's Inn was counting on him to check on the girl's safety. But he went anyway. Because Bo-Ra deserved to have someone protect her. The firefight on Mars station was brutal. Khalees's Inn had positioned her forces carefully, turning the station's corridors into kill zones. Tae-sung's team was smaller, less equipped, but they had desperation on their side. Minji was there, fighting with her damaged arm. She was slower than before, her shots less precise. But she held a crucial intersection, refusing to let Council Marines past. Her cybernetics sparked and flickered as she pushed it beyond safe limits. The battle raged for hours. Station security evacuated civilians, while soldiers fought deck by deck. Tae-sung reached Bo-Ra's protected quarters to find her calm, almost expecting him. "You came," she said. "Of course I came." Then Khalees's Inn stepped out of the shadows, weapon raised. "It's over," the Vreldian said. Tae-sung raised his hands slowly. "You know this is a trap, right? Not for me. For you." Khalees's Inn's eyes narrowed. "Someone gave you these orders," Tae-sung said. "Someone powerful. Someone who wants us dead before we expose more corruption. Have you asked yourself why?" "I follow the law. The law is broken." "You know it is. You've spent your career serving a system that protects the powerful and crushes everyone else." For the first time, Khalees's Inn hesitated. Her weapon didn't lower. Bo-Ra spoke then, her voice clear. "My parents filed proper documents. They did everything legally. The court said they didn't matter, because we're human, because we're weak. Is that the law you serve?" The moment stretched. Then, Young-mi triggered the station-wide power failure she'd prepared as emergency backup. Everything went dark. In the chaos, they ran. 3 months after the Mars station battle, the galaxy looked different. The Galactic Council's investigation into the Arconate had arrested 3 officials. The Crimson Fleet's assets were frozen across a dozen systems. Reform proposals circulated through diplomatic channels, but the tribunal's members were still fugitives, hunted by task forces and bounty hunters. And Minji was still recovering. Tae-sung visited her at the hidden medical station where she'd been staying. The facility was built into an asteroid, far from major shipping lanes. Minji sat in a therapy room, trying to make her damaged cybernetic arm pick up a cup. It took her 3 tries. "The doctor says this is as good as it gets," she said without looking at him. 60% functionality. Maybe 65 on a good day. That's still better than most baseline humans, Tae-sung pointed out. "I'm not most humans. I was the best. You still are. Just different." The rest of the team arrived over the next hour. Sun-hee brought news. Her sister Day-1 had been fully cleared of charges and released. The Earth government had quietly decided that persecuting the tribunal's families was causing more problems than it solved. Hyun-woo brought better news. 12 other species had formed their own tribunals, inspired by humanity's example. The Pelthene had established courts to address crimes their government ignored. So had the Quellan, the Hevarian, and 9 others. The movement was spreading. Young-mi brought the worst news. "I intercepted Arcanate military communications," she said, pulling up holographic displays. "They're planning something big. A terrorist attack. On Earth." The room went silent. Young-mi expanded the display, showing ship movements and encoded orders. "They've hired what's left of the Crimson Fleet. The attack will target Seoul. They'll make it look like retaliation from tribunal supporters, trying to turn humanity against us." "How long?" Tae-sung asked. 72 hours, maybe less. Dong-hyun leaned forward, studying the data. "This is massive. Millions could die. They had 3 days to stop the biggest terrorist attack in Earth's history. But they were fugitives. If they warned Earth authorities, would anyone believe them? Even if they did, would it be in time? We could surrender, Hyunwoo said quietly. Trade ourselves for their cooperation. They'd have to take the threat seriously then. Minji shook her head. Or they'd waste time processing us while Seoul burns. Taesung thought about Kalisizin, about the doubt he'd seen in her eyes on Mars Station. The Vreldian investigator had been chasing them for months. She'd gotten close enough to see that the system she served was broken, close enough to question her orders, maybe close enough to help. Young me, he said. Can you get me a secure channel to Kalisizin? One the council can't monitor? You're insane, Minji said. Probably. But it's our best option. It took young me 6 hours to establish the connection. When Kalizizin's face appeared on the screen, she looked surprised. I should trace this signal and send task forces to your location, she said. You should, Taesung agreed. But you won't. Because you know something's wrong. You've seen the corruption. The orders you received to kill us came from Arcanate sympathizers in the council. You know that now. Kalizizin's expression didn't change. What do you want? We have intelligence on an imminent terrorist attack against Earth. Seoul will be targeted. Millions of deaths. We need your help to stop it. Why should I believe you? Because you're a good investigator. You'll verify the information before you act. And because despite everything, you still care about justice. The real kind. Not the version the council sells. He transmitted Youngmi's data. Kalisizin reviewed it in silence, her eyes moving across the displays. Taesung watched her expression shift from skepticism to shock to cold anger. This shows Arcanate military working with the Crimson Fleet, she said slowly. An attack on a council member's homeworld. This is treason, Taesung finished. By a council member species against another. Exactly the kind of crime the Galactic Court was supposed to prevent. Kalisizin looked at him through the screen. What are you proposing? Help us stop the attack. In exchange, we'll submit to trial. But not in the Galactic Court. In a new court. One that's actually fair. That's not how the system works. The system doesn't work. That's the whole problem. Kalisizin was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'll need time to verify this information and position my forces. 48 hours. Can you get to Earth orbit in that time? We can. Then I'll meet you there. But understand this. If you're lying, if this is some kind of trap, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your lives in prison. Fair enough. The connection ended. Minji looked at Taesung. You trust her? No. But she's the best chance we have. The tribunal scattered one more time, each team taking different routes to Earth. Taesung's ship jumped through 4 systems, changing transponder codes each time. They arrived at Earth orbit with 6 hours to spare. Kalisizin was already there with her task force. But so were Earth defense ships. And ships from Mars. And Europa. Humanity's home system was preparing for war. Youngmi's analysis had been correct. The Crimson Fleet appeared at the edge of the system, right on schedule. 8 ships, heavily armed, moving fast toward Earth. Earth's orbital defenses scrambled, but they were too far out of position. The planet's defensive grid had been designed to stop single ships or small raiding parties, not a coordinated military strike. Taesung's ship moved to intercept with the handful of vessels the tribunal had gathered. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Then Kalizizin's task force moved into formation beside them. This is Investigator Kalisizin to all ships. The Vreldian's voice came over open channels. The Crimson Fleet has been positively identified as hostile. All units, weapons, free. Defend Earth. The battle started badly. The Crimson Fleet had heavier ships and more firepower. They punched through the first defensive line, heading straight for Earth's atmosphere. Their target was clear. Seoul, one of Earth's largest cities. Sun He had studied their ships and found a weakness. The lead vessel's shields could be disrupted if they took concentrated fire on the forward generator. But getting that shot meant getting dangerously close. Minji made a decision. She took control of a small fighter, one of the Tribunal's fastest ships, and pushed it toward the lead Crimson Fleet vessel. Her damaged cybernetic made the controls harder to manage, but she'd been flying since before the arm was damaged. Muscle memory took over. "What are you doing?" Taesung shouted over the comm. "My job," Minji replied. She dodged plasma fire, her ship weaving through the battlefield. The Crimson Fleet's point defense systems tracked her, but she was too fast. She got within range and fired everything she had at the shield generator. It worked. The shields collapsed. Earth's orbital platforms took their shot, crippling the lead ship. But a Crimson Fleet destroyer had gotten through. It launched a kinetic impactor, a massive chunk of metal and explosives that would hit Seoul like an asteroid. Nothing could stop it now. Millions of people would die. Minji saw the impactor launch. She calculated trajectories in her head, old military training screaming the numbers at her. Her fighter was fast enough. Just barely. "Minji, no!" Taesung's voice. She smiled. For the first time in months, she felt like herself again. Like the soldier she'd been before the injury. Before the doubts. "Tell Bo-Ra I kept my promise," she said. "Tell her Haven is avenged." She hit maximum thrust and intercepted the impactor on a collision course. Her ship's mass combined with its velocity at exactly the right angle. The impactor's trajectory shifted. Just enough. Instead of hitting Seoul, it plunged into the ocean. The explosion sent a wave across the Pacific, but the city was safe. Minji ejected from her fighter at the last second. Her escape pod tumbled through space until Earth rescue ships picked it up. The rest of the Crimson Fleet, seeing their strike fail and facing overwhelming resistance, tried to retreat. They were destroyed by combined fire from Earth, Mars, and Kalasazin's forces. The battle was over. The investigation took weeks. The evidence Youngmi had gathered, combined with captured Crimson Fleet personnel and Kalasazin's official investigation, proved everything. The Arcanate leadership had ordered the attack. They'd tried to blame the Tribunal to turn humanity against itself. The Galactic Council had no choice but to act. The entire Arcanate government was arrested. The species faced sanctions and reparations. More importantly, the Council itself was forced to undergo fundamental reforms. Species that had been dismissed as lesser demanded equal representation. The Galactic Court's procedures were overhauled. An independent oversight committee was established to review cases involving species without political power. The system wasn't perfect, but it was better. The Tribunal faced their own trial. As promised, it wasn't in the old Galactic Court. Instead, a special tribunal was established with judges from 7 species, including humans and Pelthene. Kalasazine testified not as a prosecutor but as a witness to the system's failures. They were found guilty. Vigilante justice, unlawful killing, multiple violations of galactic law. They were also found to have acted in response to systemic injustice that left them no legitimate recourse. The sentence was controversial. 10 years of supervised service, working to build and maintain the reformed justice system they'd fought for. 5 years later, Hyunwoo sat on the reformed Galactic Justice Council, ensuring that every species' grievances received proper investigation. Youngmi trained new investigators in forensic data analysis. Sun Hee designed secure facilities that protected defendants' rights while preventing escapes. Taesung and Minji traveled the frontier, teaching colonists about their rights under the new system and helping local security forces maintain peace. Bo-Ra, now 20 years old, was in her final year of law school. She kept a memorial in her quarters with pictures of her parents and the other Haven colonists. Beneath it was a plaque with an inscription: "Justice delayed is justice denied. Justice denied is justice taken." The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. When you deny justice to those with nothing left to lose, they'll create their own. And sometimes, the justice created by those the system failed is stronger than the system itself. Humanity remained residents of a Class 9 death world, But now that designation meant something different. It meant they were survivors, fighters, people who wouldn't accept injustice. Not for themselves, and not for anyone else. The galaxy had tried to ignore the Deathworlders. It had failed to protect them. And in doing so, they'd changed the galaxy forever.